Yeah, so I think now it's going live. Okay, so we're on live. Okay, so yeah, if you guys don't already know, you're welcome to call me Charlie. That's what everybody uses with me, so yeah. So this week we had the week's readings to our personal experiences with education, and and how the ideas shared in the article impacted our current perspectives. So, well, I'll just go first anyway, since I'm hosting, and I'll just share some of the ideas that I came up with, and feel free to interrupt. So I was really interested when they discussed the idea of equality and equity, because I think when I read about that, it was the first time I had really, I mean, I've never taken a class in multiculturalism, and China is very heterogeneous in a lot of ways, and so I've really never thought about differences between equity and equality. And when they defined equality as this idea of the sameness of result versus the idea of equity, which is, you know, giving everybody the you know, a chance to succeed, fairness. I think that really stuck in my mind because I don't know if everybody knows that difference, and I think that's something that really needs to be kind of clearly defined for people, because so much of what I read about education in the United States is really based off of the, and I think there is a big difference between the two, and that was really something that stuck out for me.
I'd agree with you. And a perfect example, one of my past teachers, not in my multicultural education class, but just in my student teaching, she said, in regards to equity and equality, she said, if you're on the recess field and a kid falls and stubs their toe, they ask for a Band-Aid. And if a kid falls and cracks their head open, equal, it would be to give both of them the Band-Aid. But that's not fair to the person who, you know, split their head open. That's not changing what you're doing to fit their need. They don't need a Band-Aid. They need an ambulance. They need, you know, medical attention. Whereas, so that's what I always think about when I compare equality and equity is the Band-Aid story. That would be the equal, but that's not what's fair.
Right. Yeah, that's a very physical example of it. Yeah.
So that equity and equality, that's the fourth principle, right? On, if I can.
Yeah.
That's the fourth. Okay. Just making sure I'm on the right page.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was something that really stuck out for me. I think, too, it's really interesting in doing some research about multiculturalism because I really come from a different, because I'm teaching in China, I come from kind of a different viewpoint than I think it is for teachers working in the United States, because here in China, most of our classrooms, like my classroom, is completely Chinese students. We have one student who is half African American and half Chinese, but even for her, she uses Chinese as a main language. So it's a pretty homogenous culture, and so, like, it's really interesting in reading the chapters to look at, you know, all the different experiences that people have considering multiculturalism, and like for me, it's really important that I have to find new ways to introduce multiculturalism in a classroom that really has none of it. You know?
Excuse me, guys, my battery goes down. Would you mind giving me 1 minute?
No
sure,
problem.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I definitely relate with you, Charlene. You in teaching, but me coming from American Samoa, where everybody, even the teachers, are Samoan. All the students are 100% Samoan. So it's you don't really find the essence of multiculturalism in our classroom back home. So to my surprise, when I first came here, that was the first time I left home, and I went to college at Chaminade. That's when I was hit with multiculturalism, and I was like, this is totally completely different than what I'm used to back in the homogeneous cultural back home. But it's like I said, most of the teachers they don't know the difference. Now that I can compare the two, they don't know the difference between equity and equality back home, because we all are one culture, and when something goes wrong with one student, the teacher assumes that everybody is the same because we belong to.
Did it cut out?
No, I think it might have froze for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
There we go.
Can you see me? Okay.
Yeah. Just froze for a second. No.
It's probably Hurricane Anna doing a trick on my. but yeah, that's the problem with coming from a classroom that has one culture. All the teachers assume that since we belong in one culture, we all have one and the same needs. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And the equity and equality can also be related. I thought, or what I wrote about in my reflection was relating it to the learning surveys.
Mm-hmm.
And with students with such different learning styles, equal would be, putting up a PowerPoint and they all can see the board. That would be the equality to it, but not all of them are visual learners. So that's not fair to all of them if you strictly stick with PowerPoints, but just that they can see the board makes it equal, but that's not necessarily fair. And I reflected on this unit I did with measurement, and my mentor teacher had me really focus on equity among all learning styles. So every day that we did a measurement lesson, we would start off with some visual work on the floor with discussion. So we hit auditory learners and we wrote on the boards that hit the visual learners, and then we'd move to the stations and they'd actually get to measure with the measuring cups and the liquids, so that hits the kinesthetic learners. And then we'd go back and review verbally, and on the board they do their journal. So it's just like it was like a cycle or a circle of hitting all or the three primary ways or learners and teaching strategies. And so I thought to myself that not a lot of teachers do that, especially when it gets to high school. It's more lecture than anything else, I think, for the most part, high school, college. But especially when they're young and they're learning, I think it's really important to have a mixture of those teaching styles so that the students can benefit from it as much as they can, depending on their learning style. So that's what I related the surveys with the reading.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Well, what stood out to me the most from chapter 1 in particular, I took the title and tried to answer the title, and the title of chapter 1 is the what, why, and how of multicultural schools. So what stood out to me the most was how multicultural came to being, and I never knew that we could credit a case, a landmark case, which is the Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, to the birth of multicultural schools, and that was what caught me by surprise, because I didn't know that that's how this came to be. But from the reading, I saw that because of that case, which overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson, which is separate but equal. So it happened around the 1950s, and to me, before I knew about multiculturalism, I thought it was something that was developed like in the 90s or just recently, but I never knew that it went all the way back to when racism and segregation was sort of the norm in America, which also makes sense. now that I think about it, because isn't that what multiculturalism is all about? Embracing all sorts of cultures. And if I could relate that, the birth of multicultural ed, to my personal experience, I can honestly say I don't have anything to relate to, because I come from one culture and we don't have racism. It's just stupid, if you're racist against your own race. So, and I was never exposed to that until I got here. And I do see it around here, sometimes, like I said last week, one of my multicultural ed professors tried to make us talk about it, and then we had a heated debate in the classroom because we went into the history of a race. So, and that's absolutely new to me. But,
yeah, I mean, talking about these things is so sensitive, really.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that when you talk about it, like if you say, like I was talking to a friend of mine who's teaching in the U.S. and I said, oh, one of the courses that I have to take is multiculturalism, and she kind of laughed and she didn't take it very seriously. But when we started talking about it and talking about all the concepts that are included in the class, like these discussions about, what race is and ethnicity is and minorities and all the vocabulary, and like that's one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was reading chapter 2, was really looking deeper at how many different words there are and how many different meanings are associated with those words, and how those words like ethnicity can be so easily seen in a negative point of view. And we really have to be careful with the way that we talk about these things and the way that we relate them to our classrooms as well.
And being careful and not to use them. I mean, I've been guilty of it, using them interchangeably, because when the book breaks it down, they each mean completely different things. And a lot of times we'll just kind of flop back and forth, meaning or thinking we mean that they're the same thing, but they're not.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So Jane, what do you think?
Yeah, I would like to share two aspects of my own experience. One is as a foreign student, international student. Another is because I just finished my 10-month internship at Shamina Preschool. So the other one will be as an international teacher. So first of all, when I came to United States, I studied at language school, which all the international students, and I think, I don't know, because of we all adults, so we know we have different culture, and maybe just for me, I don't really care about, or maybe we never have any culture issue or something. We just study and go to home. And some students, they will have group like you from China and the other from Taiwan or from Japan or from South Arabia. And when I moved to Hawaii, I'm still taking some language classes, which all the students, and most of them come from Japan. And I don't feel like really serious issue with multicultural people. But the one interesting thing is, to be honest, I really want to ask all of you one question, because I don't know if this is the culture difference or it's just based on my own experience. The thing is that when I send some email to different people, but they are American people, and they involve students, professor, and even other native people. Some of them, they reply my email like 24 hours, or even they don't have answer right away, but they will respond me. But some of them, sometimes they will respond me immediately. But some of times they never respond me. Even I send the email again and again, no response. I don't know it's because of my experience or all of you have this kind of experience. And I really try to figure out what this is about, culture or about what.
So you're asking if we have the same problem, like when we send to people from different cultures but all American, and the difference of like the differences between their replies, or is that what you're asking?
For example, if you send an email to like American people or Hawaii people, do they respond you immediately, or at least respond you right now I don't have time, or right now I don't have answer, but I will respond to you later?
Well, I personally think we all have had that problem where we send emails and people either reply or don't reply, and it's kind of irritating because you're sending it urgently or something. But I think it has more to do with the person itself instead of the culture they belong to. I don't think, because there are some people who belong in the same culture that respond differently. You know what I mean? But I personally don't think it has anything to do with the culture. More,
okay.
yeah. I don't know about Charlene and Kelly.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. Okay, so let's just talk about Beijing, because China is a massive country that has many different cultures within it. I know in Beijing, technology has superseded itself to the point where people don't even use email, really. I'm one of the few people who use it to contact either people in our class now or my family members. Everybody here uses cell phone programs like, Weixin, WeChat or something like that to connect with each other. And because those modes of communication are so fast, I mean, people respond pretty quickly. And if they don't respond, you can generally assume that you've done something wrong. But email, I haven't had that problem. But I am a foreigner in a foreign land, so I don't know.
But my question is, for your experience, do you encounter like you send email to your country people? Do they respond to you, or for some reason they never respond to you? Is that common?
It happens both ways. If I think about email, I'd have to go with Anna. I mean, it just depends on the nature of the person. There are some people out there who respond very quickly because they're not doing anything, or they have it connected to their cell phone or something. And then there's people out there who just don't really use email. I don't think it's as much a cultural thing anymore because almost everybody uses email.
And whether or not the technology is available to them, because everything out here is at our fingertips. So people from my home, they don't have the same blessings I have here. So that's why they take forever to respond back. But which is irritating, especially if I'm trying to call my dad. But for money. Yeah.
Thank you. And the other aspect is when I was a preschool teacher, in our classroom we have 5 Japanese boys, and I really find out one of my students, he actually is my case study, and he has very strong Japanese personality. Why I'm saying that? Because he always play with his Japanese friends. He really play with like American students or other country students. I don't know why. It's really interesting, but it's doesn't meaning the children they have sense of because we are different cultures. I don't think they have that kind of sense. So I think the multicultural matter not really impact on the preschool children. And I think when students realize that difference, maybe in the elementary school, I don't really know about that. How about you guys think?
I think for that student, maybe he just feels the most comfortable socializing with someone who he can see resemblance or similarities to himself. You said they're boys he mainly plays with, so that's a similarity, and I'm sure he identifies with maybe their physical traits or just their culture, and it's what he's familiar with, and that's where he feels most comfortable, and he maybe doesn't want to step out of his comfortable bubble by, how you said he rarely socializes with students of other cultures. And at that age, I wouldn't think,
Yeah.
I mean, just from hearing your story, I wouldn't think that it's a personal thing he has against the other kids, but more so just comfortability and his bubble, I'll call it, his bubble of being comfortable.
Because I'm a preschool teacher, I work with children from ages 3 to 6 here. I'm always like to say that I don't think that culture really influences children, because ultimately in a classroom they can all learn to play together. But I think what Keli says is right. That the child probably likes to play with other Japanese children, maybe also because of language. He feels more comfortable, using his native tongue with them, something like that. I've always wanted to read kind of broad spectrum study where somebody goes in to international and they can speak like 10 languages so they can understand how playing in different languages, because I don't know if it's like when we play in my classroom, they don't play the same way in the U.S. Now, I taught in the U.S. only as an intern, so I don't have a lot of experience, but what I see is that they do play differently. They kind of incorporate more of what they see off of their, their own stories that their parents tell them or things like that. And so I do actually think that culture plays a part in it. But the longer that the kids are in the classroom together, the less and less they pay attention to that, I think, and the more they just start to play together as kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that was something I was really interested in, too, when I was reading in Chapter 1 and 2. It's just like, and especially with the learning survey, the inventory survey that we took, thinking about like what kinds of tools. I mean, like Keli, you gave some great examples of how we have to kind of incorporate learning for kinesthetic and visual and auditory. But I think that we also need to like look at tools that we can use to help children integrate, so that they can different kind of cultural backgrounds. Like one of the things that I do at my school is I do home visits with the kids, and I'll go to the house and I'll kind of cook dinner with their family so that they can see what I eat. Because most of my students only think that Americans eat hamburger and french fries when they see that we, eat vegetables and, stuff like that. So, so it's one of the things that I've really been interested in. I tried to do with my observation as well as to think about what tools we can use to kind of learn more about our children, our students' cultural backgrounds, and how we can use that to their advantage in the classroom.
Well, definitely, I think the surveys, like the ones we took this week, are one method of learning about a student's culture. A list of interests, or probably holding a full week in classroom where you come, one day in your cultural costume, or in another day bringing food that represents your culture or something like that, or a myth to share, with the classroom that belongs to your culture. Those are one of the ways I know, and I've performed as a student in relation to what you're asking for, but yeah, period. Yeah.
Some good ideas, yeah.
And how would that would be hard when you think about your classroom that you described back in American Samoa, of how would you teach those students about the other cultures so that they can see beyond their classroom? Because if you had them all bring in a dish, they might bring the same thing because they're all from the same culture. How do you expand?
Yeah. back in Samoa, we have Polynesian Week, where each class is assigned a different island other than Samoa, so we never touch our own island. So that's how our teachers and the educators back home, they promote that to us students. So one class would be Fijian, the other would be Hawaiian, and then they would have like worldwide, so Mexico, India, that kind of stuff. We have that every semester, and we sort of look forward to it because we go all out for that. That's how multicultural has been instilled in us. So, but then we also have a whole week dedicated to our culture, so that makes up for all the other weeks where we plan, and we had to study whatever country we're given. We have to study their culture, the history and everything, and then present it to the whole school. So I don't know about now if they're still doing it. According to my sister who's in high school, theirs is coming up in December. So.
And that's mainly for high school students, or does it go as low as intermediate?
Intermediate and preschool. We all have that.
Wow.
We don't have preschool and intermediate. We all, like K5 to 8th grade, we call that elementary. So, and then after that, 9 to 12 is of course high school. So we have only two grades of, So we do that. It depends on the school when theirs is going to be held, but we do that every year, every semester. So I think the fall semester is Polynesian, and then the spring semester is the worldwide one. So that's how it was back home when I was in school. That was a long time ago. but yeah, this actually brings me to the beginning of chapter 2, which is there's this figure that caught my attention, and it was called, wait, where are my notes? It was comparing culture to an iceberg. Did you guys
Yeah, the visible and the invisible.
Yeah, the visible.
Right.
Yeah. So I think back home, that's all we targeted the most was the surface. With the week, like I was telling you about, when I got here, we sort of went more in depth because, like I said, Hawaii is a melting pot of culture. So we sort of went in depth because there were kids here who are from the cultures we were trying to study, from the cultures we were trying to learn about. And I think it's on page 41. So that was one of the figures that or the charts that caught my attention from today's reading. So.
And I think the best way to go deeper and and to learn about the invisible parts of a culture is experiencing it for yourself, either going there or learning from a person from that culture. I mean, you can search anything online and search, the invisible stuff, but I would think the most authentic way would, like you said, when you got here, you saw the people, you saw the kids, the first time authentic experience, and that's when it probably hit you like a little bit more than what you had known before. And and it would be so difficult though to, as an educator, as a teacher, you'd want that for your students, but to find 8 volunteers to come in or whatever it is from many different cultures and talk to the kids about the culture and teach them deeper things, that could be a hard task, depending on a lot of things of schedules and all the other things that come with teaching. But that would be something that I would want to strive to do, so that the kids could have that authentic experience and knowledge.
I was traveling recently in northern China, and it was really great. I saw a group of Australian students, and they were there. And this is kind of in an area of China where there was very few foreigners, and it was really interesting to watch. I mean, these kids must have been in elementary school, maybe like 11 or 12 years old. And it was really interesting to watch their being able to provide children with such wonderful experiences as sending them to China or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, what you guys did at your school in Samoa, and I think it's really important to kind of learn to think about. Also, really give them.
Excuse me, does anyone have hard time to hear from
She's
Charlie
frozen she's frozen on my side. Charlie?
Wait, okay.
Okay,
hey.
Okay, now. Everything's good.
Sorry.
You lost me at, I don't even remember. You lost me at Northern China.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, that's
so all I want to say is that I was traveling in northern China, and I saw a group of Australian kids. And they were, I mean, this is an area with very few foreigners. So the experiences that they gained there when I talked to them were amazing. They had a completely different view of China after that. And I really think it's true. Like, even if you can't allow your children to go somewhere and travel, like as wonderful as that, I mean, just giving them the opportunity to kind of to challenge themselves and think outside of just their home place. Like what you were saying, Anna, of the kids studying any island except for their own island. I think that's really great for kids.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, does anybody else have anything else to add? Or
yeah, may I in conclusion?
Yeah.
So I think, like I mentioned earlier, I don't really feel any negative impact on international students. So I think to study multicultural will be really fun because we can know different countries' culture and activities. This is the most amazing thing to me, and I really want to know how different countries people do different activities, and also will reflect their culture, why they doing that, and how they will fun and enjoy with that kind of activities. Yeah. Period.
Well, I just want to if we are concluding this, I just want to say in conclusion that I personally think that at this day and age, it's hard for a multicultural school or a classroom to exist and thrive, because we all live in a time where everyone is trying to belong to a culture and trying to keep their culture alive, so they want to stand alone, stand unique. And I think multiculturalism might fight off against that, because it means, mixing everybody and embracing everything. Because to me, that's what multiculturalism is. It's unity from all these diversities in the classroom. So that is a huge challenge if we want our classrooms to be a multicultural classroom, and to have that in the back of our mind. Because I know definitely in Samoa, because I'm not a teacher, but I have a nephew who's in preschool, and they all form up a gang because they're all Samoans. And then all the African Americans, they do that, and then all the Japanese, they do that. And it's so sad to see that and from them. And to them, their minds are so innocent. But when I asked them, I asked my nephew, why aren't you friends with that Japanese kid or that African American kid? And he's like, because I'm not Japanese and I'm not African American. We got to stick together and, make Samoans, live longer. So that's hard, I think, to kind of turn. Because if they're thinking like that already, and we are coming into this classroom and trying to introduce multicultural ed, embrace everybody, well, more power to you. But that's all I have to say.
May I add something? From your sharing, I feel maybe the kids, they don't really understand what's the difference between
I don't think
others.
They do.
But
yes.
Maybe adults give them this kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think this is the issue for them, but I really think as teacher we have to provide some opportunity to let them really to think about it. And this is good opportunity to study others. And yeah, it's good opportunity, I think.
Yeah. Kelly, or do you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Jane, I think you really hit on what I took out of reading the first 2 chapters of this book, which was just the level of responsibility that we as educators really need to take. I mean, as I started out saying, I mean, just reading about the difference between equity and equality, and I mean, reading about how all of these different kind of concepts of race and minorities and things like that are broken down when you really think about it. What I realized is that I have the responsibility to really continue to do my research on multiculturalism education, to really look at, what structures and what tools can I incorporate into my classroom to make my classroom more multicultural. And I think as you teach toddlers, I mean, you teach young kids, and I teach 3 to 6. For us, a lot of people out there that I've spoken to really think, oh, that's something you kind of do when you're in middle school and high school. But I really, as you said, I don't think it starts then. I think it starts from a very young age, opening children to all different kinds of perspectives and backgrounds and things like that. So, yeah, I just, in just reading the first 2 chapters, I suddenly have this kind of heightened awareness of my responsibility as an educator, and that's something that I really want to learn more about as I go through this course. you know.
Definitely. My undergraduate teacher for my multicultural education course, he really emphasized on that, how you said responsibility. He said, as he teaches the course, he said it's not, he doesn't believe that every student that leaves his course is going to become a teacher and have a multicultural classroom. He said it's up to the teacher to take on that responsibility to, like you said, do more research, find the tools you can incorporate, you know. And he said not all teachers want to take on that extra responsibility to push through that, you know, this barrier in the classroom to benefit students. He said some teachers are okay with just sticking to, I guess, not maybe closed-minded, I don't know if it's the right word, but just what the norm kind of became, rather than pushing themselves further so that their classroom can, you know, push further as a whole. And he always said, you know, it's up to you to be that teacher. He said, it's not up to me to force you to be it. I'm just teaching you about it. And then it's up to you. So yeah, that just re-emphasizes on what Charlene just said about the responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really true. Okay. Well, I think we hit our time limit.
I think we passed our time.
Okay, so next week, Jane, I think you're hosting it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all we have to do is just click on the link and add the YouTube link, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
May I ask you guys send me email about your email address? That way I can add you.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Jane, I can send you an email with everybody's because I just got them today as well.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
No problem. Okay, so see you guys next week?
See you.
4 o'clock. Yep.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Mahalo
Sounds great.
from Wahoo.
Have a
Bye.
good week.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.